Good day. We are Group 3. The members are me, Castor James J. Guerrero, Alexandria Georgina Delgado, Nicole Julian Hernandez, and Winford Enriquez. We are here to talk about Francis Bacon. First, what comes to mind when you hear Francis Bacon? For me, he is a curious human being.
Francis Bacon was one of the pioneers of modern scientific thought and an English politician and Member of Parliament. Francis was born in London and studied at Cambridge University before he became a Member of Parliament in 1584. After James I came to power, Francis was knighted and appointed as the Keeper of the Great Seal, an important symbol of the monarchy in England. Bacon was a keen scientist and challenged the Aristotelian methodology that debate and argument by learned men was the only way to discover scientific truth. Bacon believed that in determining scientific truth, scientists required evidence from the real world. His book, The Novum Organum, gave information on the correct methods of acquiring knowledge through the medium of empirical evidence. Bacon's political roles continued, and he was appointed Lord Chancellor, the most powerful political position in England at the time, and after this was made Viscount St Albans. His political career finished after he admitted accepting bribes, and he was fined, imprisoned, and banished from the court, as well as from Parliament. He was later pardoned by the king, but retired to his home in Hertfordshire, where he continued his scientific writing until he died of pneumonia, contracted while studying the effects of snow on preserving meat.
Now, for the first question, what is Francis Bacon's intellectual revolution all about? He's all about how do we know that something is true. The word science comes from the Latin root scientia, meaning knowledge. Nevertheless, where does the knowledge that makes up science come from? How do you ever really know that something is true? For instance, modern science tells us that some types of disease spread through tiny organisms. Medieval people believed that instead that sickness arose from the imbalance of the body's four senses of humor. How do we know the certainty that modern science is correct? Microscopes enables us to see the germs that cause sickness, but when we look through the microscopic lenses to examine microbes, how do we know our understanding of what they are and what they are doing is true? Of course, the medieval philosophers did not have microscopic lenses, but if they did, they very likely would have disagreed with our modern understanding of the disease, believing in the inaccuracy of the human senses and human mind's inability to judge anything correctly. Medieval knowledge and instead privileged ancient texts as the best way of making sense of the world. The intellectual revolution is all about the scientific method, an empirical method of acquiring truth and knowledge developed by Francis Bacon, which helped science develop during the 17th century. The intellectual revolution involves careful observation and formulating hypotheses. Bacon rejected the Aristotelian way of doing science, arguing logically. Instead, he believed that natural philosophers should help improve humanity through technological advances within a Christian framework.
Who is Francis Bacon in the Revolution? Francis Bacon was one of the leading figures in natural philosophy and scientific methodology in the period of transition from the Renaissance to the early modern era. As a lawyer, Member of Parliament, and Queen's Counsel, Bacon wrote on law, state, religion, and contemporary politics. However, he also published texts in which he speculated on possible conceptions of society and he pondered questions of ethics, even in his work on natural philosophy, the advancement of learning. After his studies at Trinity College, Cambridge, and Gray's Inn, London, Bacon did not take up a post at a university, but instead tried to start a political career. Although his efforts were not crowned with success during the era of Queen Elizabeth under James I, he rose to the highest political office, Lord Chancellor. Bacon's international fame and influence spread during his last years when he was able to focus his energies exclusively on his philosophical work, and even more so after his death when English scientists of the Boyle Circle, Invisible College, took up his idea of a cooperative research institution in their plans and preparations for establishing the Royal Society. The present day, Bacon is well known for his treatises on empiricist natural philosophy, the advancement of learning, Novum Organum Scientiarum, and for his doctrine of the idols, which he put forward in his early writings, as well as for the idea of a modern research institute which he described in Nova Atlantis.
Francis Bacon discovered and popularized the scientific method, whereby the laws of science are discovered by gathering and analyzing data from experiments and observation rather than by using logic-based arguments. His works are seen as developing the scientific method and remained influential through the scientific revolution. Bacon has been called the father of empiricism. He argued for the possibility of scientific knowledge based upon inductive reasoning and careful observation of events in nature. The scientific revolution, which emphasized systematic experimentation as the most valid research method, resulted in developments in mathematics, physics, anatomy, biology, and chemistry. These developments transformed the views of the society about nature.
For question number 4, what controversies met Francis Bacon's revolution? Francis Bacon is widely regarded as Britain's most significant contemporary painter. Died from a heart attack in Madrid while visiting friends in Spain. The 82-year-old painter was highly controversial in traditional artistic circles because his powerful canvases, executed with splashing brushstrokes, were often concerned with the theme of sex, suffering, and death. Many regarded his paintings as obscene. Nevertheless, his work commanded high prices. A Bacon triptych recently sold in New York for $7 million. Moreover, in 1975, he was the first living British artist to rate a one-person show at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Arts. In 1962, his large retrospective exhibition at London Tate Gallery received considerable acclaim. Additional attention focused on his paintings in 1971, when he was given a rare retrospective at Paris Grand Palais, which opened only hours after his model and lover George Dyer had committed suicide. He was born in Ireland, reportedly descended from the 16th century English philosopher and essayist whose name he bore. In his work, he broke all the state rules of traditional English art. With no formal art training, he sometimes painted with his fingers, scrubbing brushes and rags, combining different portraits from different media to produce startling images.
I agree with all of the takes of my fellow groupmates, as Francis Bacon, was a pillar to scientific curiosity. The last question was, how has the contribution of Francis Bacon impacted social in general? What are the practical applications of Francis Bacon's contribution to science? Well, his works are seen as developing the scientific method and remain influential through the scientific revolution. Bacon has been called the father of empiricism. He argued for the possibility of scientific knowledge based only upon inductive reasoning and careful observation of events in nature. Baconian method, methodical observation of facts as a means of studying and interpreting natural phenomena. This essential empirical method was formulated early in the 17th century by Francis Bacon, an English philosopher. He is an English philosopher, as a scientific substitute for the prevailing systems of thought, which to his mind relied all too often on fanciful guessing and the mere citing of authorities to establish truths of science after first dismissing all prejudice and preconceptions. Bacon's methods, as explained in Novum Organum 1620 New Instrument, consisted of three main steps. First, a description of facts. Second, a tabulation or classification of those facts into three categories: instance of the presence of characteristics under investigation, instances of its absence, or instances of its presence in varying degrees. Third, the rejection of whatever appears in the light of these tablets, not to be connected with the phenomenon under the investigation, and the determination of what is connected with it.
Now we govern nature
I
in
hope
opinions,
we
we are
all
to
have
her
learned
necessity.
about him and his
But if
works
we would be
and
led by
origins.
her in invention,
Thank you,
we
and as
shall command
always,
her
have a
in
good
action.
day.